Hi everyone, this is Lisa Truesdell, a garden girl at 2peasinabucket.com with this week's Memory Keeping Monday. Today I'm going to be sharing a fun technique to use confetti on a page as I take you through one of my layouts from start to finish. I'll be working with a winter photo today, but rather than use a blue and white color scheme, I'm going bright and bold. I've pulled one multicolored pattern paper from my mind's eye and used that to bring together a rainbow of tone-on-tone papers from other manufacturers. Since my photo and my background are both fairly neutral, I'll be able to play a bit more with accent colors. I've also set aside some embellishments from American Crafts, My Mind's Eye, and Studio Calico, and brought out my favorite confetti making punch. This is the Swiss cheese large edger punch from EK Success. And if you don't want to get carpal tunnel punching confetti one circle at a time, you'll want to pick up this punch. I've started pre-punching confetti from pattern paper scraps as I go and keeping it together in a small jar for whenever I want to add it to a project. I love starbursts right now, and I think it's a perfect fit for the action in my photo. There are a few papers out there that have this design already. As you can see, I've used the lines on this pattern paper to map out where I want to add colored paper and where I want to add confetti. I've made some sections wide and some narrow to make the design more dynamic. If you don't have a pattern paper like this, you can draw out your own design on cardstock. I started mine by marking where my photo would go, then choosing a point behind it where all my lines would intersect. Hiding the point of the starburst gives you a little more wiggle room. Everything doesn't have to meet exactly. I used a ruler and drew lines from the point out to the edge of my paper. I'm labeling each section as I go. It makes it easier to remember which pieces will stay as part of the background and which will be cut away. I'm also numbering them so I can use them as patterns later. Next, we're going to use a craft knife to cut away sections of our background. I'm following the lines and notes that I made earlier and just cutting against a ruler. Be sure to keep everything you're removing from the background. We'll use them later. Don't worry about the points being perfect. Remember, that part will all be hidden behind your photo. Now I want to fill in the pattern paper sections of my starburst. I'm using the sections that were cut away as a template. I just lay them on my pattern paper and trace around them. I'll need to cut them a bit bigger than the pattern pieces so that I can adhere them behind the background. I planned out which colors I'll use where in advance so that I get a good mix of warm and cool tones around the starburst. It's okay for your pattern paper to stick out past the edge of your background at this point. We'll trim it down later. I've flipped the page over so that I can back the remaining sections of the starburst with 2 layers of transparency. I'll fill them with confetti once I've finished my other background details. I'm working with 8.5 by 11 transparencies from the office supply store, so I'll need to make sure that the seams are hidden behind the pattern paper. I'm also making sure to hide all of my adhesive. If you don't want your page to be entirely see-through, you can add a layer of cream cardstock behind the transparency. I've added machine stitching along the edges of the transparency sections and journaled in the starburst design. I've also used a border punch on some pattern paper and am adding them to the rays just to break up all of the straight lines in this design. I also want to add this arrows border stamp from American Crafts along a few of the rays. Since I'm stamping on an uneven surface, I'll rock the stamp back and forth slightly to make sure I get good coverage. I'm also adding a second stamped image, stamped without re-inking. It gives a bit of a funky, imperfect look. This dark stamping helps balance out the black journaling on the other side of my page. It's finally confetti time. As I mentioned at the start of the video, I pre-punch my confetti with an EK Success Swiss cheese border punch. I found that a spoon is the best tool to get it into the pockets. I add a little at a time. If you add too much, it will all bunch up and it won't move around inside the pocket. As you go, you'll want to stop and shake your confetti down into the pocket and add more as needed. A paper piercer is really handy to have around. You can use it to help move the confetti down into the tight spots. I don't use any adhesive. The tension of the transparency is enough to keep the confetti from moving around a ton. Once your pocket is filled, you'll want to stitch the edges closed. And now my page is almost done. I've added cardstock to the edges of my background, making it a true 12 by 12 layout. I also added borders at the top and bottom and a few patterned paper strips along the edges of the starburst. I used foam adhesive to attach my photo. It helps give it a bit more presence on the background. Next, I'll add my title. I like that these stickers from American Crafts are big enough not to get lost in my busy design, and the silver glitter is a fun touch on a winter-themed page. Since the starburst background has such a big impact, I'm keeping the embellishments on this page minimal. I'm just using some wood buttons, a couple of patterned brads, and a decorative pin. Here's a closer look at the embellishments. I love that the wood buttons add some dimension, but since they're neutral, they don't compete with the starburst. I also added some gray grid pattern rub-on stars. One of my favorite ways to attach decorative pins is to just slide it between two layers of paper and tape it into place on the back of the page. I absolutely love the effect of the confetti on this page. While confetti is fun glued onto a background or in a pocket over patterned paper, it makes a much bigger impact in a clear window like this. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you're inspired to get out there and make some confetti. Please come back next week for another Memory Keeping Monday at 2peasinabucket.com.